welcome to my shed. I've been doing a little work recently on these two engines, the Honda C90 12 volts and the Honda C90 6 volt, the older model. And I thought before I set up the timing on the 6 volt one that I'd share a little video with you. So here we are. You don't need many tools for the job. A couple of screwdrivers, 14mm spanner, set of feeler gauges, and this little device, which is the multimeter, and that's all you need. Now if you're really posh and you have in your possession one of those electronic ignition strobe guns, then you can use that, of course, but a strobe gun would be of little use if, like in my case, you've got the engine out of the machine, or perhaps your engine isn't running very well. A strobe gun would be of no use then, because it needs the engine to be running in order for it to work. If you're thinking of buying a strobe gun, by the way, make sure that it's suitable for 6 volt engines, because many of them run off 12 volts. However, if you set up the timing correctly with this multimeter, then your ignition timing should be spot on. There's no hit or miss about it. If you do it correctly, then the engine should fire up first kick and run smoothly, and you should have no problems with it. So let's crack on. Okay, let's make a start. First thing we've got to do is take the cover off the generator and the cover off the points. So we need Phillips bit screwdriver for this. Just a word of caution, make sure that the screwdriver that you use fits snugly into the head of that screw, because if the bit is worn or it's the wrong size, perhaps a little small, and the screw is difficult to turn, you're likely to damage the screw head, and you'll turn it round and ruin the head there, and then you're left with a problem. What started out as perhaps an easy job now has turned out to be a very difficult one. You're left with the problem of how you're going to get that screw out, which probably will involve a drill and trying to drill it, and you really don't want to go there. So make sure your screw bit fits nice and tight. If the cover hasn't been taken off the engine for a long time, then these can really be tough to release. These screws can, and if you're finding you're using all your strength to try and budge them, stop, because you're going to ruin them screws. Best thing to do, if that's proving difficult to undo, use one of these, an impact driver. You just simply insert it into the head of the screw and give it a couple of sharp bangs with the hammer, and it will release these screws. I would say the impact driver is probably one of the most useful tools you can have in your toolbox. I certainly have used that many times, and if you've got older bikes, then it's a must that you have one of those. Okay, so let's get the cover off. I had this off earlier, so these screws are quite loose, so we take these off like this. One, two, there we go, covers off. You'll notice that behind each of these screws there's a little rubber O-ring. You do get some oil come through here, and these little rubber O-rings are just to seal those screws in. I think also they act a little bit like a spring washer, these rubber O-rings, because you will get vibration on your engine, and with the screw in tight against the rubber, it will stop them working themselves loose. So that's what I think anyway. But initially they're little oil O-rings. Okay, so we've got the cover off, and here is our stator assembly with the copper coils, the generating coils that generate the electricity to your lights, indicators, and power up your battery. And we have here the rotor. Now you'll notice on the rotor there's two letters here, T and F. F is your firing point, which we're concerned with when setting up the timing, and the T point, which is our top dead center point. It's when the piston is on its compression stroke and it's at the top of the cylinder. Now this rotor will go round rotate two revolutions before it's on its compression stroke. So you need to be careful that when setting up the timing, that you set it on the compression stroke rather than on the bottom of its stroke. So you could in fact be 180 degrees out if you did that. So get our 14-inch spanner, 14mm spanner, sorry, and you notice when I turn this, you see the arrow, which is on our stator assembly, we release the spanner and it won't hold in place. So if we're trying to set firing point there loose, it moves. That's because the piston is on the top dead center point, the compression stroke, and it wants to move down. If I turn the rotor a full 360 degrees round back again, you notice I can set the position there, top dead center and firing, and the rotor doesn't move. So we can tell then that the piston is on the bottom of its stroke. So that's a little point. If you want to know if your piston's at the top of its compression stroke, it's that little trick. So we'll just rotate it around again and bring it back round, and you see there it's moving again, so we know we're on the compression stroke. Another way to tell if you're on the compression stroke is with your tappets here. If you can feel movement there in your tappets, then you know you're on your top dead center compression stroke. If it's tight, then the likelihood is that you're 180 degrees out. Okay, going on to our points now. Before we can do anything, the first thing we need to do is set our points, our contact breaker point gap. Now, according to the manual, the gap between the 2 points there should be 0.3 to 0.4 millimeters on the metric scale. I've got my feeler gauge on 0.33, which is somewhere in between the two. So you notice this is actually on the end of the cam. It has a cam here, and as you turn this around, it will push on the heel of the contact breaker points and open them. And the way to set them is to turn it until that gap is the widest it can possibly go, and then you measure that and set your gap correctly. Now I don't know if you can see it on this video, but I will turn the machine and hopefully you'll see them gaps open. Let's do that. You notice that? Don't know if you can see that. When you feel that you've got the widest gap, you put your feeler gauge in and check it. It should just slide with a little bit of contact. If you find that when you put the feeler gauge in that gap there and the points start to open a little bit, you can see a bit of movement, then you know it's too tight. And on the other hand, if you put your feeler gauge in and it's too loose, then obviously the gap's too wide. But it looks like I've got the gap correct on here. That just feels about right. If the gap is incorrect, then what you need to do is undo these two nuts, this screw here and this screw here, and then you put your flat-headed screwdriver into this little notch here and move it either way till you get the desired gap. Tighten up your screws, just check it again to see if it's the correct gap, and then you're done.
Power up.
Okay, so let's begin with our timing. We get our multimeter, set it to continuity, which is usually a bell symbol or something like that, and just check that you have got the continuity setting. Put your two probes together and you get that ring or a bell. Okay, so you've got your continuity setting. Then you get one of your probes, it doesn't matter which one. In this case I'm going to use the positive one, and you need to get this wire here that runs from your contact breaker points and join it to your probe. Now you could use sellotape or something like that, I suppose. I'm just using a little bit of piping that I got off a fuel line, so just stick that in there, and that there holds them together firmly. That's fine. And then you get your other probe and you earth it to the bike, or ground it, depends which side of the water you live on. Usually we use the word ground, don't we, rather than earth. So that's that, and we're ready to test our settings. Okay, looking back at our points then, first thing we need to do is undo these two screws here, this one here and this one here. This takes the pressure off this back plate which holds the contact breakers, and so let's do that. I've undone these a little bit already, but we'll just do that. No need to undo them right out, just enough to enable you to move this back plate, look, this way or that way. And the object of the exercise is to set the timing marks on the firing position so that the points just begin to open. So if we look back at our rotor, we'll see when we turn the rotor. Now if you look at the firing position, can you see that as it lines up with that arrow, that mark? So the engine is moving round like that. Cuts out there. I'm still a little bit out there because it's rotating round there and it's cutting out there, so I just need to adjust the plate a little bit more. Okay, I've moved the back plate a fraction on the contact breaker points. Let's see how we do now. The engine moves round, comes to the firing point, and there we go. Try it again. Yes, I'm happy with that. That should fire up nicely. Okay, got the covers back on the engine. Job done. Engine is ready to go. Hope you enjoyed the video and thanks for watching.
Live from your